again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Lilia able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal. Bring in the fans, one. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
So, I don't know why, but randomly today, when I was sitting in selection for jury duty, Fat Lip by Sum 41 just randomly popped into my head. And they were like talking and like asking people questions, and all I could think of was dun 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 dun. I don't know. That's all I got for you.
No, man.
Sum 41.
I was
very funny band.
I sent this to you earlier, but I was hoping you were like the new guy, the new cast member for season 2 of Jury Duty.
Yeah, exactly. There's no James Marsden, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
Because then me and James Marsden could be best friends. Talk about how good Dead to Me is, which, if you have not watched Dead to Me. Oh, by the way, actually, that's what I fucking meant, but I got stuck in jury duty. How have you watched jury duty, but you still haven't watched Shoresy?
I know. Yeah. That's and I keep seeing the commercials because it's on Crave here, which is like a streaming platform. It's part of it. I don't have it, but I have Bell, and Crave is owned by Bell, so I get the commercials from it, and it's talking about season 3 or season 2.
Season 2.
Season 2 of Shoresy's coming soon, and like every time I see it come up, I'm like, yeah, fuck, I gotta watch that. Steven wants me to watch that, and I haven't watched it yet. And I've started watching other shows. And it's not even that I don't want to watch Shoresy. I just forget about it every time I go to watch anything. And then I start another show, and I get a couple episodes into it, and then I'm already in it. So then I have to finish watching that before I can watch Shoresy. So I'm into finishing The Bear right now, and then
the second season or the first season?
The second season.
So I've only seen the first season, and I refuse to watch the second season.
Why is that?
I'm probably going to give in and watch the second season soon.
Why do you refuse? For a good reason or a bad reason?
I think the end of season 1 was perfect.
Yeah.
The season finale in season 1 ended. And the show immediately became one of my 10 favorite shows I'd ever seen. I thought everything about that show was perfect. And I was absolutely terrified that another season would ruin it.
Yeah, it could have been a limited series and finished right there.
By everything I've heard, Marissa's watched some of it. I don't think all of it. Mm-hmm. But she likes season 2 a lot.
Yeah.
So I'll probably watch it when she rewatches it. Or
it's good. I was worried in the direction that they were going to take with it, and if it would have the same feel to it, because it like knowing where they would go with season 2, it felt like it would feel like a different show. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, but it didn't. No, it's good. It still has the same feel to it, and the same. It feels like a season 2, and it doesn't feel any worse so far. I think I'm trying to remember where I left off, because it's been a couple weeks since I picked it up. I think I'm only on like episode 2.5, so I'm on like halfway through episode 3. So I'm
of season 2.
Of season 2, yeah. So I'm not super far.
Season 1, I think it's the 4th episode where they go and do the kid's birthday party. Is one of the funniest episodes of television I have ever seen. Like, every other episode of that show is an absolute panic attack.
Yeah.
Just your heart is racing the whole time. Everything is super stressful. And that show perfectly breaks it up. That episode perfectly breaks it up. And it is so funny. And like, I randomly think about the scene where Carmi is talking to Cousin, and he says, and the cousin goes, who puts, or he asks him, did you bring the ketchup? And he goes, no, I wouldn't bring the ketchup. Who the fuck puts ketchup on a hot dog? He goes,
kids.
he goes, assholes put ketchup on hot dogs. And he goes, kids put ketchup on hot dogs. He goes, yeah, asshole kids. So funny, dude. It's so good.
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed the first season, and it's one of the first TV shows I've picked up and watched a whole season in a while. It's been a while, which is why you can see why I haven't gotten to Shorzy yet, because it's been almost a year since I picked up a show and actually watched it. But I've heard all good things about it, and I think the last show I watched before this was Ted Lasso, all the way through. So I felt like I had to give it a chance. I've heard good things.
I didn't watch season 3 of Ted Lasso. I've only seen the first 2 seasons.
It's good, man.
But I've seen enough clips on YouTube that I know what happens in the 3rd season.
Yeah. It's a good ending. It's a fitting ending to the show. It's a
Yes, our story is very much like Les Mis. Them turning Nathan into Jose Mourinho was the best.
Yeah.
That rocked so much.
such a random turn, but it was great. I loved it.
Oh my goodness.
With what?
So yeah, as you guys can tell, nothing really happened recently for the Ducks, so that's why we're talking about everything else.
Yeah, that's our excuse for missing the month of September. Our last show was August 24th was our last show. But we made it for the start of the season. We honestly thought that Zegras and Drysdale would have been signed by now. And, I mean, now we are here because Trevor Zegras has signed a contract extension, 3 years by $5.75 million. Drysdale's still unsigned. But other than that, like, really wasn't a ton that happened. Obviously, yes, there was the rookie face-off tournament. There was preseason games. I think this is preseason game number 3 that's happening right now between the Kings. I think so. Preseason game number 3.
Between them, yes, I think total this is like the team's like 6th or 7th preseason game.
For the Ducks? Really?
Maybe 4?
Wow.
No, because they've played.
This is bad. You can tell I'm a big preseason hockey fan.
I hate preseason sports. It's so stupid.
I just hate the how much gets made of it, and whether it be in looking at rosters and how guys are doing. Like every year, there's like 11, 12, 20 fucking guys who just blow up and like, oh, this guy's gonna do really well this year. He's gonna be right now, and I for good reason. But Matt Coronado is having a really good preseason with the Flames. And everybody has put him into the Calder conversation with Connor Bedard, which is great. Like he is a talented player. It's not like he's a nobody, but it's those types of things that make me not want to watch preseason. Is like the hype for some guys where they're playing like either split squad games half the times, or they're look at the Ducks lineup tonight of how many guys are actually going to be on the opening night roster. You get that from most teams. Where okay, great, he had a 4-point night, or he had a hat trick, but against who? Coronado had a hat trick, and I was watching the game at a friend's house. They were playing Vancouver, and the 2 goalies that were in net for Vancouver were guys I've never heard of. I don't think they've played a single NHL game in their life. So that's the thing with preseason for me that I can't get behind, is that you can't read too much into it. It's like the rookie faceoff tournament as well, right? Like you can't read too much into it as well. I like that a bit more because it's peer on peer and they're at the same level.
Exactly what I was going to say. I think the rookie faceoff tournament has a lot more merit to me, because I think the relative experience level of everybody and the fact that, like you said, it is peer on peer, like to me, that has far more like projectable value.
Yeah, you can see who's farther along, at least.
Zach Kassian is on the Ducks' second line right now. And you want to know how I know it's preseason? Nobody on Twitter gave a shit.
Yeah.
Everybody on Twitter was just like,
look at that
dude, look
defense.
at the blue line, which justifiably so.
Yeah.
That defense looks awesome. It's exactly what you want to see. That's what preseason more than anything is for, is to put these like weird hybrid future present rosters together, lineups together. But like, if this was a regular season game, no one would give a shit that Tristan Luneau is playing. All they would be pissed about is the fact that Zach Kassian and Chase DeLeo are on Adam Henrique's wings on the second line.
That's how it always goes. You would care that Tristan Luneau was playing for the first game, the debut, maybe the second game.
Right.
And then beyond that, it would be all about who is playing where they shouldn't be playing. Because that's how it always is. Why is this guy playing in the top 6 when this guy's on the third line, whatever. That's just the way it always goes. So, yeah, I mean.
No, and for sure. And, like, everybody has the right mentality right now of like, damn, look at that blue line, that rips. Like, I'm very proud of everyone. But like, to that extent, like you're saying, I have no interest in like having really significant takeaways of preseason.
Yeah.
I would rather just use the first 10 games of the season to see how everybody looks.
100%.
When it's, if for no other reason, set NHLers based on opening night, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, these are NHLers this year. And you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. No.
And like, that to me is far more.
Because, I mean, you can look at it
beneficial.
now, and I know it's been trimmed down and the roster is a little bit harder to project in a sense, but there's still a lot of guys you can look at and be like, okay, I know this guy's going here, and I know he's going back to junior. He's definitely getting sent down to the minors. So you can still look at that and say that. So that's the thing for me. Like, yeah, as host of a Ducks podcast, should we be watching preseason? Maybe. Is that going to change my mind? No, I'm still not going to watch preseason hockey. It's not going to happen. If you came here for a recap of preseason, it's not going to happen. Now,
Very sorry to disappoint
we'll break down the remaining roster, who we think should make the Ducks, and none of it really has a bearing on preseason. If you look at the points leaders for the Ducks right now, Sam Carrick is leading the Ducks in points in preseason right now. Does that mean he's going to have a 50-point season with the Ducks? I don't think so.
Sam Carrick is going to win the fucking Art Ross this year. Let's go.
Yeah, Jackson Lacombe has 3 points in 2 games. Now, that one I put a little bit more merit into because he has played very well. And I do think that trends well for him to get a roster spot with the Ducks.
Yes.
So there are takeaways you can look at on preseason success for sure. But again, it's the two sides of the coin. Sam Carrick's the leading scorer in preseason. It means nothing more than the fact that he has played more games than anybody, and he has been one of the forwards who's played in all situations for the Ducks, because there's been no Trevor Zegras, there's been no Mason McTavish, there's been no Adam Henrique, there's really been no Troy Terry, I think, other than one game, if that. I'd have to go back and check the roster. So the main guys haven't been. Alex Killorn is injured, right? So Sam Carrick, step on up, right? Like that's the guy who's gonna have to step up at that point. But the blue line is where we've seen a lot of the younger kids, and I think that's where a lot of obviously the hype and the talk has been about, and we already mentioned it tonight with the talk about the blue line, is because you've got guys like Zellweger, Leno, Minchikov, who are all playing tonight. You've got Noah Warren still there. You've got Tyson Hines just got sent back down. But you've got these guys that are exciting that you can watch, and the Ducks just picked up Lassi Thomson. He's not playing tonight, but another former first-round pick to add to the mix. So there's at least some excitement there, and really the only exciting name still left on the roster, and this is not a detriment or a negative comment to the guys that are still here, but it's Leo Carlsson, right? Like, beyond Zegras when he plays and gets back in the lineup, and maybe Mason McTavish when he gets back into the lineup, there's really no exciting young names in the forward group other than Leo Carlsson that you want to pull up and watch and see if they have what it takes to make the roster.
No, for sure. I mean, yeah, like, I think the person who has the most to learn from preseason is the coaching staff.
Yeah.
It's the head coach or the coaching staff. Like I said, person, so I can't even say like multiple people, whatever. But like, I think if you're like a coach, you're like, okay, look at the opportunities I gave this player. Let's see how they reacted. Let's see how they did when I put them with these people. Let's see where their head is out on a nightly basis and stuff like that. But like, as a fan, like, yeah, I think it's perfectly fine to be like, oh, this guy's the leading scorer. That doesn't mean anything. Oh, Jackson Lacombe's having a nice little night. Go him. You know what I mean? But like, I don't think you can have any big sweeping takeaways one direction or the other, because I just don't think, I just don't think there's enough of any type of information to really say that. Now, tonight's game, I think if you wanted to say top to bottom, the Ducks roster is just clearly not of the same quality or caliber as the Kings roster. Sure, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But that's also not information that comes from preseason. What you're seeing is that information which going into preseason being proven in front of your face, right? That's a little different to me.
Yeah, no, I could see it, and I mean the last couple games of preseasons are always the ones you can look at a little bit more because that's generally when you get to what opening night roster will be, like the last game, if not maybe the last two, is where you see kind of set lines and what you expect the team to roll into game one with. I think this is the third last game of preseason. They've got two more games before the start of the regular season for the Ducks. That's on October 14th, but obviously the regular season starts on the 10th. So I think they play again on the 5th and the 7th, I believe, so every other day. So those games might bring a little bit more, and I'll check the lineups before those games to see if we see any of the regular starters get into the lineup here. I'd imagine at some point they'd want to get Zegras and McTavish some ice time, some game time before the regular season, before game one, but we'll see. But looking at these rosters, you want to break down it a little bit here and see who we see if we can do some projections, I guess, and see who can stick around, who we think is going to get sent down. Because right now, for the forward group, there's technically 21 guys, but Killorn and Lindstrom are injured long term, so that's not going to count. And then Zach Kassian's on a PTO, so there's really 18 guys. I don't think Zach Kassian gets signed and sticks around. And then for the defense, there's again technically 14. Drysdale's still unsigned at this point, and Scott Harrington is on a PTO, so that leaves us with 12. I would say lean more to 13 for this one because I expect Drysdale to be signed and ready to go for the start of the season, but still hasn't happened, so we'll go with 12 for now. But of the 18 forwards, we got obviously Terry, Zegras, Henrique, Vetrano, McTavish.
So here, let's do it this way.
Okay.
Let's say stay or drop, and then if you have anything to say about anybody specifically, and then at the end we can see if we have like any big picture stuff.
Yeah.
But this way, like, instead of just yelling names at people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, fair. And most of these guys in the beginning are going to be pretty quick to go through because they're gonna stay on the roster. Okay, Troy Terry, obvious. Stay. Obviously, yeah. Mainstay on the roster. Same for Trevor Zegras, now freshly signed. He'll be a stay. Adam Henrique, stay.
Sure.
Frank Vetrano,
stay.
Mason McTavish.
No. Yep. Ryan Strome, stay.
And this is maybe where we get a little bit interesting. Max Jones.
Right.
It's probably a stay.
I think Max Jones is a stay. I think if he's going to not be on the roster, it'll be via trade.
Yeah. There's just not
like if you
a
told
lot of
me
competition.
they traded him to fucking contender Y for a third-round pick, 100% could see that. Would not be surprised by that at all. I have a very hard time thinking he goes to San Diego.
Yeah.
One, I don't think he would clear waivers. And two, I just don't know that there's any value in doing that.
No. Yeah. And this,
these are a good hit tonight, though. I'll say that.
Yeah. There's just not enough competition behind him for us to say not staying at this point. There's more question marks for a lot of the guys further down the list. I guess this is the first discussion point one here. It's Leo Carlsson.
Yep.
I think it's stay for the 9-game stint. And then it just becomes a question of what has he done over those 9 games. And it's what has he done to show that he can stay at the NHL? Because I don't think he's going to San Diego. So if he hasn't proven that he's ready for the NHL, it's back to Sweden, I think, at that point.
If you had to guess, and you had to make a hard choice, what do you think happens? Do you think he plays in a 10th game, or do you think he ends up in Sweden?
I think he ends up in Sweden.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't think they... I don't think there's enough positives from the team as a whole and enough to show that he's 100% ready and wouldn't benefit from going back. And I think he ends up going back. I think he could be very close to being ready, but I think when the decision comes to it, they're going to send him back after the 9 games. I don't think he's going to stay a full season in Anaheim. I'd be very surprised if he played a full season here. And I don't think they want to send him there. One, he wants to go there, and that he would end up in San Diego at any point, right? And that's the risk you run for Anaheim. And keeping him here for the entire season. He's not going to play 25 games in Anaheim and then 40 games in San Diego. I just don't see that happening. So I think the decision is made with the player at that point. They'd be realistic about what they would expect for him and how many games they'd expect for him to play at the NHL level, and if they expected to send him down at any point. And then the decision just becomes there. What's best for his development? Is it and what's best for him as a player? Is it to split time between the NHL and AHL, or send him to Sweden? I think ultimately that ends up being the decision that they opt for, is to send him back to Sweden for the year.
Yeah,
it's not out of the realm of possibility for him to stay up for the entire year. I just think it's more likely that he goes back to play in Sweden. And all three are great options. Sticking in the NHL for 82 games means that he is good enough to play, and he showed that. There's nothing wrong with him being, between San Diego and Anaheim. We've seen that development with the rest of the players that don't have that option. Zegras, Drysdale, McTavish have all been those kind of bit part guys. And going back to Sweden is not a bad option either. He gets another year in arguably the third best league in the world, playing against men in a team that's supposed to be better this year, playing with some really skilled players in offense. So he gets another year developed there. So all three options are great. I just think the most likely option at this point is going back to Sweden.
Yeah, so it's interesting, man. Like, I think listening to the way people talked about him over this last week, I can very easily talk myself into him staying.
Mm-hmm.
But listening to some of the comments around Trevor Zegras and his contract, and then just thinking about the top of this year's draft, I almost think it's going to be the William Eklund thing, where he is probably clearly good enough to play and stay here, and he just ends up going back. If the top of this draft was the Slafkovsky Shane Wright draft, I think he plays. Because I think the opportunity to get Celebrini or Yzerman and have it definitively be the last year of the rebuild from a drafting high perspective.
Yeah.
Right. I think, and that's something we'll talk about as the year and stuff goes on, right? But it's the idea of a rebuilding cycle, and again, things like where Pierre Dorian says stuff like the rebuild is over, and like partly you're like, well, that's a fucking stupid thing to say, and then also partly you're like, I get what you're trying to say. And I think here for me, if you said this was the last year in the drafting dudes, and we want to switch into the developing this pipeline into an NHL roster, I think that makes sense. I think adding Yzerman or Celebrini to this group adds, or the possibility of doing that is worth burying him in Sweden for one more year.
Yeah, and it's not, again, like, it's not harming his development to do so, so it makes it a bit of an easier decision to do that if you still think he can benefit from doing so, which I think he can. He's a great player, and he's played really well. He played great at the rookie faceoff. He's played great in preseason. I do think there are parts of his game that are ready, or NHL ready, and I think he would do well. But he's not at that point where I'm like, oh, there's nothing to gain. Like for McTavish, you could say there was nothing to gain for him to go back to junior. And that's all. A lot of times that's the case with these guys. But for him going back to Sweden, it's a whole different story. It's a whole different league. It's a whole different environment to go back to. I still think there's a lot of things he can benefit from going back there, rather than sticking around in a Ducks team that's going through a lot of change. There's going to be a lot of hardship this year. I don't know if it's the best thing for him to do, especially if they don't think he could stay up and play the entire year. I don't think split time between the NHL and the AHL is probably my least favorite option of the three. I still don't think it's a bad one, but it's my least favorite option.
I think it depends on how the split happens.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, and I know that sounds silly, but like if he stayed up for 15 games, went down, and came back up at the end of the year for 10 games, that wouldn't bother me.
yeah, it could be similar to
Because
what we
that's
saw
like
with
we gave
Zegras,
him,
right? And
yeah, it's like
drafted
we
it.
gave him a full run. We wanted to see what he could do at this level. He showed that he doesn't need to go back to Sweden, that there's nothing to be gained there other than comfortability. And we want him around our guys because, again, I think also having Matt McIlvaine down there changes it, right? I think something we've heard Verbeek talk about and McIlvaine and Cronin have talked about as well is the idea of kind of an organizational like synchronicity, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody kind of being on the same page and really having kind of an ideological through line in the way that the teams play and what they prioritize and stuff. That wouldn't really bother me, and you get him some time down there with Gaucher and with probably Lacombe and probably Minchikov and
Pasteurov's down
probably
there too,
Zellweger.
so
I think you can pretty easily talk me into that. Now, if it's 10 up, 10 down, 10 up, 10 down,
yeah.
5 up, 20 down, like if it's overly up and down, then I think it's just like it would be like the only way this makes sense is like injuries. But if that's the case, why wouldn't you just leave him up all year?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because clearly he's good enough to come up, but you're just kind of trying to let him be down there. And it's like they've got guys like Nestorenko and DeLeo and not Grant, but like Carrick and stuff. Like they have guys that can fill those roles.
Yeah.
That don't have to be Carlson. I think it's an interesting thing, but I do think you're right. I think ultimately he ends up back in Sweden.
I will say the obviously the Lindstrom injury, but now the Killorn injury opens up the possibility a little bit more that he sticks around longer, past the 9 games, because Lindstrom's out for 6 months and Killorn's out for 5 to 6 weeks. There is more of an opportunity for him to stick around and play meaningful minutes. Where the options to replace him aren't as sexy or as had the potential to actually take hold of that role. It's a stopgap for a lot of these other options that the Ducks have to fill Killorn and Lindstrom's shoes at this point. So I think those injuries present an interesting opportunity for him to stick around longer. But again, I do think ultimately Sweden is the place he ends up. But it's definitely not clear cut. I think it's very close to being, a third of a chance on each side, where it's very, very even on where he could go right now. We also haven't heard anything, right, from Pat Verbeek or from the coaching staff or from Leo Carlson suggesting what the plan is going to be and where he's going to go, other than some reports that they're going to give him the 9 games at the very least. And I think that might just be the plan at this point. We're going to give 9 games and see how it goes. And then, make the decision from there on what the best plan is based on how he does over those 9 games, which I'm fine with. Give the kid a chance, and if he proves he is good enough to stay up, then he earns a roster spot at that point.
Yeah, I think you have to give him 9 games. I think based on everything we've heard and a little bit we've seen, I think you have to give him an NHL game, even if it's just one, and he gets the doors blown off of him, right? Like I like. Because it's not like a condensed schedule thing like football, right? If it's one game out of 82 where he's up and he gets the doors blown off of him and he's like, oh, okay, I got shit to work on when I go back.
Yeah.
You're like, hell yeah, that rocks. I don't know that I would feel that way again if it was like a compressed season similar to like there's only, 17 games in an NFL season? Just because the weight of each individual game is so different. But I definitely think you have to give him a game. And I think, by all accounts, it'll come down to the 8th game. Like, I would imagine before he plays his 9th game, they'll know their answer.
Yeah, they have to.
If it takes him more than 5 games, I'll be surprised.
Yeah, I think they have to at that point. Okay. Next guy, Brock McGinn. Stay or go?
Stays up.
I think he stays up.
He's going to be.
Makes
He is
too much
going
money.
to be a valuable bottom 6 player for this team.
Yeah, he also just makes way too much money to send down as well. So I think he's better than a lot of the bottom 6 options that could stay up as well. So I do think on merit and skill level he deserves to stay up, but he also makes over $2 million, so he has to stay up.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, to me, if you told me he's the wing opposite Strome or Vetrano or even Henrique for almost any center, okay, cool. I totally get it. I totally get what we're doing here. Totally fine with me. I just think he's fine. He's just a solid player. He's going to be fine. He scored a couple of goals this preseason. I have no issues with him being on the team. And like you said, he makes a lot of money. He's got another year left on his deal. So unless there's some kind of trade, which I don't see, he's going to be on the team for 82 games.
Yeah. Jacob Silfverberg. Stay.
Yeah, yes.
Same as the
there's no other option. Like, with him, I guess the question is, unfortunately,
can he stay healthy?
Does he play 82 games? Does he play 70 games?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. If you told me he only played 35 games this year, I'd totally believe you.
Yeah, you just don't know.
He struggled with his health the last few years, and it's unfortunate, but, if nothing else, he's earned the right to just limp out the door. Like, I don't, in a perfect world, I guess what you say is he fucking balls out for a couple of months and they retain 50% and they trade him to a contender as a third line depth forward and they get a 3rd or 2nd round pick or a nice little prospect.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That would rock.
That's
more than likely
dreamland as good as it gets at that point.
Yeah, more than likely on fan appreciation night, he's putting his stick in the air for the last time.
Yeah. Sam Carrick.
Stay, but again, like, to me, if you told me he was traded before they played 3 games, I would 100% believe you.
Yeah, it's stay because he's, one of the better 4th line options the Ducks have and takes over that kind of Derek Grant role where he moves up the lineup if they need to. So he stays for now, but yeah, again, not a guaranteed thing long term. Even not a guaranteed thing for him to not get sent down at any point. If they want to give another player a shot, there are a lot of those fringe players the Ducks have right now between San Diego and Anaheim, where it's not a guarantee. I think he's above a lot of other guys where that probably doesn't happen, but I wouldn't say it's a guarantee that he doesn't get sent down to the minors. I don't think he's the guy who would get claimed either. So, especially middle of the season.
That's what I was going to ask you. What are the odds that he makes it through waivers?
I think it's 80% chance he makes it through waivers.
Yeah.
Like unless a team really needs a player like him and wants to take a chance on it, it's one of those claims where you're claiming him because he feels a need, not because you see any potential beyond what he already is.
Yes,
and that doesn't happen too often, waiver claims like that, but it does. I mean, the Ducks claiming Brett Leason, you could say, was one of those. So maybe they thought there was a bit more potential there, but you kind of know what Brett Leason's going to be. So there's always the chance that a team claims him for that very reason. But I do think there's a good chance if they ever needed to, he would clear waivers. But I don't think that happens. Definitely not to start the year.
For sure. Yeah, no, I was just curious. I'm with you. I think he stays up.
Brett Leason.
I think he gets traded more than anything. I think he goes down.
Let's see, how many do we have right now? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We already have 11 before getting to these guys, so there's only 2 more we can put on. And we've got some interesting names here. So yeah, he could definitely go down. Looking at some of the other names we have here, it's going to come down to him and I think 2 or 3 other guys, so 3 or 4 guys total with him into the mix that are vying for 2 spots. So he's 50-50 for me, man. he scored tonight, and he's going to have to continue to play well and produce in preseason for him to get a roster spot, but I don't think it's guaranteed by any means.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's guaranteed by any means. I guess the argument is, do you want him or Nestorenko in the lineup? And maybe you say you'd rather have Nestorenko playing higher leverage minutes in the AHL because he is younger. There is more, like you said, projectable upside with him than Brett Leason, who, while maybe you could be like, there's a little bit left that he can improve, he wasn't a guy who was going to make any significant jumps in his relative abilities or whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess to that end, maybe you say that he stays up and they send down one of the younger players. But I don't know how to say this without being rude, and I'm really not trying to be, but I don't know that it makes a difference whether he stays up or down.
No.
You know what I mean? And so he was waived by Washington, wasn't he? So it's not like they were a team that was balling out last year, and they were like, oh, we just don't have room for this guy.
It's picking and choosing at this point between, I guess, the type of player that the coaching staff would rather have or based off performance, because you're really, there's really no difference between him and Pavel Regenda or Nikita Nestorenko other than maybe play style and how they fit where you want to play them.
Right.
And then off of preseason performance and line chemistry and yada yada yada. There's a lot of things that go into it, but there really is no difference on a nightly basis on what I think Brett Leason's going to give you, and what Nestorenko's going to give you, and what Regenda's going to give you. So it's an interesting one. So I have it as 50-50, and I think it is between him and those other guys who we mentioned, and maybe a couple others on the list. But those last two roster spots is kind of drawing straws on who it's going to go to.
Yeah, and I think it's more ideological than any practical decision making, because it is, do we want to use those roster spots on younger guys who maybe look ready to take the jump, or do we just want to use them on competent, capable NHL players that we know can perform at X level on a nightly basis? And I don't think there's an issue either way, right? I think if you said, we want Regenda and Nestorenko playing top 6 minutes in the AHL over, 10 minutes a night in the NHL, okay, I have no problem with that. That's totally fine. If you said, we know what Leason is and we want to get 20 games out of the other two guys that I said and see what they're actually at, maybe they're better than Leason already, yeah, that's fine. Again, I don't mean to be shitty about it, but I don't think Leason is of a caliber that it makes a difference either way beyond what it tells us about what this front office plans to do with this year.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, we have those other guys we're going to get to here. I think this next one's kind of an easy one, at least for me. Andrew Eggs, I think he's going down.
Oh, he's going down. Yeah. He's going to be in San Diego.
That's on the next waiver cuts, probably before the next preseason game.
Yeah,
I would
for
imagine.
sure.
Pavel Regenda, we just talked about too.
I think he could finish the season with the team.
Yeah.
If they traded Rico, you know what I mean, or something like that, or there was an unfortunate injury or something like that.
Yeah.
I could absolutely see Eggsino playing 17, 18, 20 games.
Yeah, he'll be a tweener
at the end of the year.
Up for injuries, he'll be one of the better players in San Diego. He's got a lot of experience. He's a good AHL player, and yeah, he'll come up, and if he played 10 to 15 games due to injury or trades or whatever, and Ducks needing to fill a roster spot, I think he's one of the first names to get called up, because it's an easy move to make. Pavel Regenda, we just talked about with Brett Leason. I
think he goes down.
Yeah, I think he goes down. He's in the same kind of boat there as Leason. One of these guys has to stay up, but I think him and Leason go down. Obviously, Killorn and Lundstrom are next on the list, but they're injured. And then we get to Nikita Nestorenko. I think he stays up, man.
I think he's going down.
You think so?
I wonder if you wouldn't rather have him play top-line minutes with Nathan Gaucher.
Yeah. No, for sure.
You know what?
I'm just going off pure numbers. We need 12 guys. We're at 11, and likely 13, right? Is what they're gonna land at.
Yeah.
But you don't want him being the spare forward because there is one more guy in this list that I think is the 12. So then, do you want Leeson as the 13? Do you want Regenda as the 13? Do you really want Nestorenko as the 13? I think he's the player I'm more excited about between Regenda and Leeson. But do I want him as the 13? Probably not. It means he's not playing. So it's a tough decision.
Yeah, like, here, I want to jump to Anaheim's cap friendly because I want to see one specific thing real quick. Where are you at? Nestorenko is 22. Glenn Gaudin is 26. Mm-hmm. I think that's your 13th guy.
Could see it, yeah. I could also see Leeson or Regenda
6'1",
more so.
200 pounds, good
as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you want Nestorenko to be your 13th man. And I don't think he is in the 12 at this point.
He's a center right wing. He shoots right. I think it's him, man. I think Glenn Gaudin is your 13th forward.
Yeah, no, I could see it. The guy we have after it he's my number 12. It's Benoit Olivier-Giroux. I think he makes the roster.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's the 12th man on this team. And then it is between Gaudin, Nestorenko, Regenda, Leeson for that 13th spot because I don't think Chase D'Elio is an easy down for me. And I don't think Zach Kassian gets signed. But if Zach Kassian got signed, he'd be in the mix, I think, Well, he would be the 13th guy if he gets signed to a contract.
He'd be the 13th guy. Yes.
And it'd be a pure situational basis type move. So I could see him getting signed for that sense. If they play games where they want a Zach Kassian type, he becomes the 13th man and gets rotated in for somebody to play, in those games where they want a tough guy and enforcer. But he still gets thrown into that conversation between Leeson and Regenda and Nestorenko and Gaudin on who's going to be the 13th man. And I think it makes more sense, like you said, to have Gaudin as that guy because you want Nestorenko, you want Regenda, you want Leeson playing minutes. You don't want them sitting on the sidelines. You're kind of okay if Glenn Gaudin is sitting on the sidelines. You're kind of okay if Zach Kassian is sitting on the sidelines. So, yeah, I would lean to those guys. So our 12, Terry, Zegras, Henrique, for Toronto, McTravis, Strome, Jones, Carlson, McGinn, Silfverberg, Carrick, Benoit Olivier-Giroux are our 12. And then Glenn Gaudin is our number 13. So we'll see. Those are our predictions.
And it's interesting because it gets to what you and I were talking about before we started recording. If you don't want to carry 8 defensemen, you know what Zach Kassian is? The perfect 14th forward.
Yep.
Like, I know it sucks to hear. I know we don't want to go through that, and I get everybody's like, he doesn't bring anything. There's younger guys, specifically guys like Agenda and like Nestorenko, who you could give time to. I think in this situation, the thing to remember is it's not somebody that you're giving time to. It's somebody you're kind of explicitly not giving time to.
Yeah.
It is not easy to play every 7th, 8th game as an NHLer. Again, especially with as ridiculous as it is and was, this is a dude who spent 60 games on Connor McDavid's wing. This is a dude. You all right?
Zach Kassian just burst through your door.
Yeah, Zach Kassian came in and tried to fight my girlfriend. He kicked his ass. It's cool. But no, I think that's the way to look at that, right? Is it's not someone that you're taking time away from somebody else. It's someone you're explicitly not giving time to. And that's actually a very difficult thing to do. And if Zach Kassian can provide a very specific role to the team and be comfortable, again, playing once every 7th, 8th, 9th game, and rarely back-to-back, I don't know that's the worst because like what they're going to give him a $750,000 deal, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not. They're not going to sign him to 3 years, $3 million or anything stupid. Like
No, league
it's going to
minimum.
be nothing.
I don't know many guys who come off PTO and don't sign league minimum.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing is he's a 14th forward. I think Bo probably gets that fourth line center spot to start the year.
Yeah, I think
and I like that a lot.
Plays with Sam Carrick and
probably Leeson.
Yeah, Leeson, I guess if he sticks around.
Maybe you play Bo out on the left.
Yeah.
Play Sam in the center and Leeson on the right.
All three of them have played center at some point in their career, so there's some.
And Brett Leeson has played both sides too, so
yeah, there's some flexibility.
If you want to play Bo at center, I don't think it's an issue.
No. Onto the defense, and there's less sure things with the defense here. Cam Fowler, obvious, stay, sure thing.
Yes.
Radko Gudas, stay,
yes.
Sure thing. Are we assuming Jamie Drysdale gets signed before the start of the year?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well that's a sure thing. He stays. That's 3.
Yes.
From here on out, it's a mixed bag. I think the next guy I think is the closest thing to a stay is Lyubushkin. I would say he's number 4 for sure stay. And then it is a toss up between these guys and whether they're 6 or 7, an 8th defenseman, or they are in the minors. And first one up is Robert Hägg.
I think he is a permanent Anaheim player.
Yeah, I think he's a stay too.
I would have him as, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at like who I have, and like the player that makes the most sense to play him next to is Drysdale, which makes him like your second pair guy. But like with Lyubushkin and with Drysdale, I don't think it's gonna be a true second, third pair type thing.
No, I have my ideal 6, and I'm sure our ideal 6 are roughly the same, and who we want them paired with is probably roughly the same too, because I had Hägg with Drysdale and Fowler with Gudas, and then Lyubushkin with my number 6, which in this case is Jackson Lacombe, is how I had it set up.
Yeah, look, man, I don't know that there's another left-handed defenseman in play here
to take
that makes a claim. No, for Lacombe.
Oh, for Lacombe. Yeah.
I think that 5 is set. Fowler, Hägg, Gudas, Drysdale, Lyubushkin.
Yeah, especially the way Lacombe's played in preseason. Again, Zellweger was great early preseason. Was great in the rookie tournament. Mintyukov's been great, but again, like these guys they're gonna go to San Diego. They just are. Mintyukov, Zellweger going to San Diego. Luneau, Warren are going back to junior. That's just the way it's going to be, unfortunately, for those guys. It's probably the best thing for all of them. Luneau and Warren to go back to junior. I would love Luneau in San Diego. He just can't. Mintyukov and Zellweger, I think the best place for them to start is to be top guys in San Diego, because they will be. They'll both be power play 1 guys, I would imagine, because there's not a lot of great forwards down in San Diego, so I could see them both being on power play 1. Maybe they split it up, whatever. They're both going to be key options down there. Scott Harrington, I don't think the PTO gets signed. I know you've had some thoughts about that. Do you think he
I like him. I would be. I
just think there's too many other guys. I think this is my thing.
Are there though?
There's Colton White, Urho Vakanainen, now Lassi Thomson.
I mean, I guess. I look, man. Again, like I'm just gonna be a jerk, and I'm not trying to be. I don't really want to hear about Urho Vakanainen playing NHL minutes until he plays a full AHL season.
No. Yeah, he's number.
This guy
he's not even my 7.
Stay healthy.
He's not my 7. He's Vakanainen is San Diego bound for me.
I see the allure. He's a good skater. He has a good pass. Like I get what it is, but he just seems like the next Brendan Gooley to me, which is you get why they were brought in. You get why they were part of the trade. You see what the allure is, like I said. But boy, is it hard to see it all coming together unless something drastically changes. And unfortunately, that something is not only they need to stay healthy,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of guys in front of them from an ability perspective and a projections perspective that, like, what does Euro Vakanainen end up being?
Yeah.
You've got Zellweger, you've got Minchikov, you've got Lacombe, you've got Hines. Like, I don't know how far down you get before you're like, Euro Vakanainen is the guy who's going to be in our top six.
Yeah.
To me, I would love to see him have a nice full season in the AHL and make Pat Verbeek have to make a hard decision next year about keeping him, moving him, whatever. But man, until he can play 60 games a year, I just don't know that I think he should be a legitimate candidate for that spot.
No, I don't think so.
And so yeah, that's the thing for me. Like, I think White is a perfect seventh defenseman. I think without Hag, I would have been fine signing him and then maybe taking Harrington
Yeah.
off of his PTO. But I think, if it's just Hag, Lacombe, and White under Fowler, I think that's fine. That's a perfectly fine situation to me. They all provide a little bit different something. I like Lacombe a lot because I think he provides a little bit more offensive output from the left-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think beyond that, it's a lot of, at best, two-way guys.
Yeah. I think the pairings that way, you get a puck mover and an offensive guy kind of on each line.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Fowler, Drysdale, Lacombe, and then you've got the stay-at-home two-way guys and Gudis, Hag, Labushkin, who are going to be kind of so you've got the traditional kind of sense, a build of a blue line pairing there. So I like it for that. I just like the fit of all those guys with each other. I think Gudis with Fowler works well. I think Hag is a really good fit for letting Jamie Drysdale do what he does best. And then you're kind of left with Labushkin and Lacombe, but it does kind of work out again, similar to
Makes perfect sense.
Similar to Drysdale and Hag in that sense of allowing Lacombe to be the kind of primary puck distributor on that pairing as well. The only guy that's kind of interesting for me is the guy we just picked up. It's Lassi Thomson. That one is interesting for me strictly because I think if Jamie Drysdale is either not signed by the start of the year or is not ready to play by the start of the year, that Lassi Thomson takes his spot. So he plays in the NHL in where Jamie Drysdale would play until Jamie Drysdale can come back, and then he's San Diego bound. That's the way I see it, is over White, over Vakanainen, over any of the kids. I think Lassi Thomson is the guy that would take Drysdale's spot if he wasn't signed or wasn't ready to go.
Yeah, and you said, like I said, we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording. You were saying you think Lassi Thomson provides an interesting opportunity to go 8 defensemen on the day-to-day roster.
Mm-hmm.
What about Thomson gives you reason to think that could work?
He's one of the guys I want playing, similar to Nestorenko and Leeson, so it is tough to have him not playing continually, but I think it just provides a couple of different options. Again, I like having White as a lefty and Lassi Thomson as a righty to kind of sub things out. I don't think Hag is going to play 82 games. I don't think Labushkin is necessarily going to play 82 games. So you have a variety to switch guys out based on matchups and what teams you're going against. And I just think for the forwards and the appeal of instead of going 13-7, go 12-8 is you want Nestorenko down in playing minutes. You don't want him off in the press box. You want Leeson playing minutes. You want all those guys we talked about playing minutes and playing meaningful minutes. Whereas you want that for Thomson as well, but there's a little bit more variety to shift things around and play guys higher in the lineup on the blue line, because beyond Fowler and Gudis and Drysdale, it's not set in stone. So you have opportunities to shift up into that top 6 if you want and move guys around. And so I just think there's a bit more variety there in what you can do. And Lassi Thomson, outside of the kids, provides the most upside. former first-round pick,
Mm-hmm.
a guy you just clearly claimed off waivers because you see something in him. He's played 18 NHL games, had a pretty good year in Belleville last year in the AHL for the Sens. So I want to see more from him, more than Vakanainen at this point, more than Colton White. I want to see what the Ducks have in him, and again, it's another right-handed option, which is nice.
Here's a question that I have for you, and it's kind of one question in two parts. Would Lyubushkin pass through waivers, and how good would Thomson have to look for that to become a thing of waiving Lyubushkin potentially?
I think he would pass through waivers similar to Sam Carrick. I'm like 80% sure, I guess, unless a team that has cap space wants a defenseman like that, him as a 6 or a 7, which is definitely possible, but I give a lot higher chance to him passing through. I don't think it's impossible by any means. I think Lassi Thomson could impress and take that. Lyubushkin's good, and he's good at what he does, and he's an NHL defenseman, but by no means does he have the world over Lassi Thomson that there's no way in hell that he would take that spot. I think Thomson has the potential and can be good enough to take that role from him, and I don't think Lyubushkin, what he makes and the hesitation to maybe put him on waivers, I don't think that's a roadblock to Lassi Thomson playing as an every night player, right? Playing in the top 6 defensemen and playing significant games for the Ducks this year. And the same goes for Albert Hagg as a sense, if you wanted to roll 4 righties or something like that instead. I don't think it's out of the question that Lassi Thomson could take one of those spots.
No, that makes perfect sense. I was just curious. I admittedly haven't seen much, if any, of what Lassi Thomson has done. I just know of him more as a concept, essentially. But I don't disagree with anything you're saying. And yeah, I do think this kind of being the last year of such a tough cap situation, it makes it more likely that a guy like Lyubushkin or even a guy like McGinn could make it through waivers because they do have a bit of a bigger cap hit. And there aren't a ton of teams who can, A, afford to absorb the hit, and B, would have the interest in absorbing the hit. Because that is a definitive, we're improving the bottom of our roster move.
Yeah.
And the limited upside means, is this what we want to spend the cap space on?
Yeah, you'd be looking at maybe a team like Buffalo who has a history with him, a team like Arizona if they wanted to bring in another NHL body that might put a claim in on him. But again, it's very limited and it's situational based off of the team needs at that point, injuries, if guys didn't progress the way they wanted to. It would have to be timing based on him not clearing waivers and getting claimed by somebody. But I think more often than not, he's a guy at this point that would pass through waivers.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I'm trying not to yawn. No, 100%. I feel you. So, do we have anybody else on the defensive list?
No, that's everything we have for that. So then our defense is, like we said, Fowler, Gudas, Hagg, Drysdale, Lacombe, Lyubushkin, and Colton White as our 7. And then we had our 13 forwards, and then obviously, well, I guess maybe not obviously because we talked about this before the show. It's Gibson and Stalock, I guess. Or is it
In
Gibson
my opinion,
and
yes.
Dostal is the question.
I think Dostal is absolutely going to spend the majority of this year in the AHL, barring a Gibby trade. And even if that, I still don't know how much of a lock that is, because they likely would have to take a goalie back. And why wouldn't you then just let that goalie play the NHL minutes?
Yeah, I think it starts the season, Gibson Stalock, but I do have a bit more faith that Lucas Dostal just plays so well in San Diego that you either roll 3 goalies or Stalock can get sent down and he'd go through waivers. I don't think anybody would claim him, and even if they did, they do have Callie Klang and Gage Alexander there, so I don't think it's out of the question. And we talked about it earlier this year, one of the last few podcasts we did, that Stalock kind of is the tweener guy, right? He is the, if Dostal's playing well enough, you're fine sending him down type guy, but probably starts the season as the backup, and you just wait and see how things go in the first few starts for Lucas Dostal for him to kind of get up to speed and prove himself.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's absolutely right. And, I think, again, there's also a world in which Stalock gets traded as well, right?
Yeah.
He makes like $850,000. He's only signed for the 1 year, I believe. It is not out of the question that somebody, as happens every year, somebody's backup goalie goes down and Stalock looks okay in Anaheim and or San Diego this year, and somebody calls and says, "I've got a 5th-round pick with your name on it," And so I don't think that's out of the question at all. So
yeah.
I do think you're probably right that by the end of the year, Dostal probably plays 15 games at the NHL level?
15, yeah, I think 15 to 20, 25 on a very high end.
20 feels high to me just because that's 1 in every 4.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time seeing him get to 20 without somebody getting traded.
Yeah, I'm just expecting it at that point and by the deadline. That Gibby, we expected almost every year for the last couple of years, but that Gibby isn't here, and that opens the opportunity for Dostal to get more starts, or at least we talked about, I think, splitting starts near the end of the year. Even if Gibson doesn't get moved, instead of Gibson starting the majority of the games, and Dostal only starting second of back-to-backs, you start splitting starts, and that's where you start getting, maybe only has 10 starts leading up until that point, but you get another 10 to finish the year, 10 of 20 to finish the year. That gets you up there to 20 games played. So I could see that being a bit more of a possibility, where even if Gibson isn't traded, that you could pretty easily get to 20 and splitting starts in those final 25 to 30 games after the trade deadline. But if Gibson is traded, that's where Dostal gets into that 25-30 games played or start range. But it just depends on when and if John Gibson gets traded.
Yeah, the other thing is we all talk about like asset management and all that kind of stuff. Alex Stalock is a 36-year-old to-be UFA.
Yeah.
If you still have Gibby after the trade deadline and you still have Stalock, you can waive Stalock and afford to lose him for nothing.
Yeah.
Like, that's not an issue. Again, he's 36 years old, and if you can't get anything for him in a trade, but somebody wants to take him for free, again, you're not losing out on anything, because in that situation, more than likely what that's causing you to do, or the reason behind it, is you are bringing up Dostal, and the opportunity and upside of getting Dostal those extra starts at the NHL level is worth more than the principle of losing a player for nothing, especially, again, a 36-year-old soon-to-be UFA.
Yeah.
It's not like there's compensation picks in the NHL or anything, so it's not like they can get a 6th-round pick if he leaves in UFA.
Yeah, so there's no downside, and like we said, we brought him in as almost that middle ground option to make sure Dostal is ready to be a full-time NHL player, and if he is great, then you don't lose anything, whether you waive Stalock and he gets claimed, or you send him down to San Diego, or you move him out yourself. Like, it really does not affect the Ducks too much, and I think like they secretly would like to see a bit more of Calle Clang as a starter in San Diego as well. As much as we want to see Dostal and his development, I think they do want to see Calle Clang get some more games at the AHL level as well, and be a starter down there and get a handful of games for his development. So seeing Dostal step into a more of a full-time NHL role, even as a backup, and to see Calle Clang move into the starting role in San Diego, and again, for Gage Alexander to get more starts as a backup, I think for the Ducks goalie pipeline, that's the ideal situation to see development and increased roles from all three of those guys.
100%. I don't have anything interesting to add to that.
The one interesting thing we have to get into, because we barely discussed it, and it's probably the last big thing we have to talk about, the Trevor Zegras extension. We touched on it. We didn't really dive into it. We mentioned how much it was for.
I'm going to get a glass of water so you go crazy
no
setting
problem.
this all up.
But we didn't go into it. We didn't talk about it too much. But Trevor Zegras did finally sign 3 years, $5.75 million. The rumors around it were, the crazy thing, I guess, is like it got to a weird place that I didn't necessarily think it was going to get to, and it almost turning negative into, the trade rumors were never concrete or from anywhere serious, but it got to that point, it felt like, in that the Ducks are, maybe he's not going to be signed by the start of the season. They value him at apparently around $4 million, but the player in Zegras values himself at around 7 to 7.5, which, again, you look at his production and his peers. I know people compared it to Elias Pettersson's first contract as a bridge deal, obviously getting compared to Jack Hughes and Dylan Cousins and a lot of other younger players around his age, and what they were getting in terms of long-term deals around $7 to $8 million. It feels like right in the middle of what both teams were opting for. The real thing was the money. The term was decided apparently a while ago. 3 years was what they were both comfortable with, and the team being fine with 3 years, because he still has 2 years of RFA status after this ends, and the player being able to also get a bit of a bridge deal and prove himself over the next 3 years to get a bigger deal when the cap does finally go up, not locking himself into a smaller contract, an $8 million contract now, with the cap going to probably go up significantly over the next 3 years, that he could get into that 11, 12, $13 million range if he really explodes over the next couple of years, which, I mean, as personally, that would be great, because that would mean he's a 100-point player, and he's worth, 11, 12, $13 million. But it's just weird how this all unfolded. Ultimately, it's right in between where both player and team expected it to be. Like we said, on the low end, $4 million, on the high end, 7.5. It's right in the middle ground there. The term is what they wanted. The real issue and kind of the negative thing was how long and drawn out the process was to get there.
Are you concerned about that process? So
long term,
like you said, it got weird in some of the discussions, essentially. There were people saying, Verbeek is playing hardball and he's going to cost himself this, and he's being way too aggressive and all this stuff, and like he's got to stop and think about what he's doing because of the long-term repercussions of this stuff. And then there's people from the outside being like, oh, he's going to trade. Trevor Zegras doesn't want to be there, blah, 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 blah. And then you also have my favorite brand of people who are like, well, if I was the Ducks, I would have signed him to a long-term contract. And it's like, sure, because the truth of it is only one person gets to pick how a contract works. Like that. It got so weird. People are already concerned that Pat Verbeek isn't very good at this based off of his negotiations with Terry and with Zegras. But I don't know really what could have gone all that differently as far as outcome is concerned. Frankly, the fact that he got 5.75 I think is great. That's more than I would have expected him to get. But again, Pat Verbeek was there when they signed Braden Point to his contract, his bridge deal, and that was 5.9. So it doesn't feel that insane to me that this is a 3-year, $5.75 million deal for a guy who, at this point, is a legitimate top 6 offensive producer. That is what he is right now, no matter what. He is a guy that I think you can say he's probably going to get us 60 plus points every year, He's going to improve our power play and likely our overtime play because of his ability in open ice, his vision, his skill. But he's not a first-line player yet. And if he becomes the first-line player that he wants to be, again, like, he's not going to take an $8 million deal.
No.
Because I think if you asked him, if you hit your peak, what are you? He would say, I'm a $10 million player.
Mm-hmm.
Especially as someone who does consider themselves to be a center.
And he watched all his friends sign long-term deals, 7-8 year deals around $7 to $8 million.
Yeah, well, I mean, Matthew Tkachuk makes more than Jack Hughes. You know what I mean? Like,
we watched Caulfield and Hughes both signed 7-8 year deals for between $7 to $8 million.
Yeah, I mean, Caulfield is 8 years by 7.65 or something like that, and then Hughes is the 8x8 flat.
Yeah.
But like again, like Trevor Zegras knows that like if he's the guy he thinks he is, he's a $10 million player.
Mm-hmm.
So why would he? I don't think people are like looking at it from a fair square deal where it's like, yeah, he'll take those 3 years. And then in a perfect world, he gets to walk into there in August of, what would that be, 24, 25, 2025, right? Which would be when he could negotiate an extension. He walks in there with a ski mask and a gun, and he says, put the money in the bag. And they're just like, yeah, okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
You're our Ross Hart Trophy level player, and you're the offensive player that we pair with this. You know, hopefully Leo Carlsson is a dynamic defensive two-way star. And they're just like, this is our foundation. We've got these guys, and then we've got this incredible blue line and this incredible goaltending tandem, and we think we're a contender for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. There's really no losing in that sense.
Again, and I'm sorry, but like we've talked about this all summer, and I have maintained that a bridge deal is not the worst outcome here because it allows everybody to get what they want.
Yeah, like just the fact that again, when this expires, you still have 2 years left of RFA status. So he's not walking, he's not going anywhere. He's not Matthew Tkachuk-ing you and picking your destination because he only has 1 year of RFA eligibility. He's got 2. The Ducks have control, and you know, the worst case scenario is also the best case is that he takes these 3 years to prove that he is a 100-point player, a all-star superstar in this league, like you said, a Hart Ross or a Hart Trophy candidate, and he becomes worth 11, 12, 13 million dollars, and that's the worst case. The Ducks are set up to be able to afford that with the way they have their roster set up right now. That's the worst case. On the flip side, he completely falls off the face of the earth, isn't worth the 5.75 you gave him, and you renegotiate a smaller deal at that point, or you move on from him, right? Like, those are the opposite ends of the spectrum. Neither of them are hurting the Ducks long term.
That to me is the actual worst case scenario.
Yeah, for sure.
By the time it comes to renegotiate his next deal or to negotiate his next deal, he is either only as good or not as good as he is right now. Mm-hmm. Because again, if your thing is like, well, they're going to have to pay him huge money in 4 years or 3 years. Right, but what does that mean? What is the context of that decision, which is he becomes a player that is worth significant money?
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. And for all of these fucking people who want to tell you, well, the cap is going to go up. The cap is going to go up. In 3 years, it's going to go up $10 million or whatever the shit. If that is true, then it's not that big of a deal.
The problem I think we see
just
with that
not.
Is we always deal in the base number. Oh, he signed a $13 million deal, so we're dealing with $13 million based off the cap and what it is, right? And we're projecting saying, okay, well, like if he signs a $13 million contract, I'm saying on the very upper echelon, high end of it, right, in 3 years, everybody looks at that as if it's today. And it's compared that to today's cap when you should be looking at it with the percentage of the cap. And what is his salary to the percentage of the salary cap? If he signs a $13 million contract in 3 years when the salary cap goes up, that's almost like him signing an $8 or $9 million contract now because the salary cap has gone up. Yeah, the number is higher, but the cap is also higher. So the percentage of his salary against the cap is exactly the same as if he had signed a long-term deal now, but you get him for that extra 3 years. So you had him for 3 years at a lower amount. Now you've got him for 7, 8 years, hopefully 8, 3 years down the road. So you now have him for 11 years. And you've given yourself a little bit of protection there on the 3-year deal, less that he has to go out and prove it. The player's given himself some protection in a sense to be like, listen, like I'm going to go out and prove it over the next 3 years that I'm worth more. I don't see how this ever leads to anything negative. Like I've seen people saying, "Oh, like this is going to create issues when it goes to the next negotiation." Nobody's going to care about this in a year or 2 years, or when they go back in the room to negotiate an extension. If Trevor Zegras, does what he hopes that he can do, I don't think anybody's going to care about how negotiations went this year. We don't even know how they went. They just went longer, and the player and the team were on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how much they thought the player was worth at this point, which is the same for every single negotiation in the NHL with every player. Is the team is lowing balling and the player and the agent are on the upper echelon, and usually they meet somewhere in the middle. That's just how it goes. That's just usually where you fall. Unless you are in Austin Matthews and Nathan McKinnon, you walk in there and say, I want to be the highest paid player in the NHL. There's nothing you can do about it. And that's where you end up getting. There's not many players who have that type of power.
And that's exactly it. Again, if the worst thing that comes out of this is he shows up with an empty bag and says, put the money in the bag, you won.
Yeah, because he became that guy.
Like, it's so hyper analytical, fake fucking, like, I don't know how else to say this. It's so finance bro to me. And it drives me crazy that it's like, oh, well, you could have had this thing at this much lower cost control point, blah, blah, blah. Right. Sure. But there's a downside and a risk to that nobody ever seems to want to talk about.
He's walking to free agency.
No, it's that you pay him. Again, like I talked about this a little bit on Twitter. I don't remember from where, since I have like 75 fucking accounts I can access to now. But like, you don't want the Nick Suzuki deal.
No.
That's what you don't want, which is where you're committed to this player for this extended period of time for him to be a guy he's not. Like, I like Nick Suzuki. I am hoping he continues to develop and is a very good player. He is not anywhere near the... He is not worth almost as much as Jack Hughes by the amount of money that they actually make. Yeah. There's only like a $250,000, $300,000 difference in their salaries, if that. That's not the difference in their production. That's not the difference in their impact. So as much as you can be like, oh, well, the Devils got Jack Hughes and blah, 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 now we're going to end up having to do this and pay this guy all this money. It's like, oh, no, this player we drafted to be really good turned out to be really good, and we have to give him an amount of money commensurate with his ability. God forbid we pay anybody what they're worth in this league. Like, I fucking hate it. It's so finance bro to me. It's so stupid. It's so devoid, frankly, of compassion. Like, it's devoid of humanity. These are real people, and I think having to hear that you're the worst, at least like the most underplayed player in the league, the way Nathan McKinnon did for 4 years, is more damaging than, that my boss was kind of mean to me that one time when I was 20 and we were trying to figure out how good I am.
Yeah.
I don't understand the talking points around this, and I find it baffling because it feels like people are projecting their own silliness into this situation, when again, this is the best outcome for everybody.
Yeah.
Because in 3 years, we're going to know what he is.
one thing too is like, why are we so quick to criticize Pat Verbeek for this negotiation? Is it because he didn't or wasn't able to stick to the mold and do what every other team did with their young superstars lately and sign them to an 7 or 8 year deal and lock them up long term? Is it the time that he took? Is it the fact it leaked that there was a sizable gap between what they thought he was worth? Like, I don't understand why we're so quick to judge here, because it's not an easy contract situation. Everybody wants to make it out to be and say you just pay your star and you give him an 8-year deal and you give him $8 million and that's that. I don't think it's that easy, because Trevor Zegras has been good and he's one of the most marketable players in the league right now, sure, but are you sure that this is the type of player you're going to get every year? Are you sure that the potential is there that he's going to get to a 100-point player? You don't really know yet. So as much as the player wants to bet on himself for 3 years, the team wants that protection for 3 years. I would be more upset if Zegras was instantly signed to an 8-year by $8 million deal and there was no back and forth and there was no negotiation, there was no sticking to your guns as a general manager and saying, listen, I'm trying to do what's best for the team here, and I want to find a deal that works for both of us, not just for the player but for the team. I'd be more upset if he just brushed it aside and said, listen, this is what the Devils did with Jack Hughes, this is what Montreal did with your buddy Cole Caulfield. Okay, we're going to give you the same deal, we're going to get this done quickly, and that's it. There was thought put into this. There was a team building aspect, clearly thought of here, longer than 1, 2, 3 years down the road of what this is going to look like. I don't see anything wrong with what Pat Verbeek did to get this contract over the line. I don't see anything negative with it. I don't think that it taking this long means anything negative towards the future and the relationship between Trevor Zegras and Pat Verbeek. But again, when you have this much time to sit there and think about it, discuss it, and talk about it, and it's all Ducks fans have talked about over the last couple months, you start drawing conclusions that aren't really there.
Yeah, no, I don't, and I mean, I don't know how much of that comes from guys like Friedman and Sarabali and Dreger and stuff just being like, oh, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's going very well. Seems pretty shitty. People aren't happy. This is going to be hard. And it's like, okay, sure,
maybe.
Agent? Well, that's like, yeah, like maybe that's true, and maybe that's what you're hearing, but also like, what the fuck? Who gives a shit? Yeah. Negotiating a contract isn't supposed to be fun.
No.
It's a fucking business transaction. Like, and again, like, it's two people trying to come to what is the best for both of themselves and also respect what the other party is trying to do. Again, oh no, we're going to have to pay him in 3 years to be really, really good because he's really, really good. Tragic, man. Cry me a fucking river.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to get me to be mad that they're not stealing from a player. Because essentially that's what a bargain contract is, right? Every time they go, oh, can't believe it. We fucking say it out loud. Mm-hmm. Oh, that contract's a steal. It's that player is not making as much money as they're worth. I have no problem with players making what they're worth because that's what they deserve. Mm-hmm. And if the GM has to work a little harder to figure out how to build around these incredible players, then, oh no, I'm sorry, right? That's why, like, as much as you can sit here and be like, yeah, the Toronto job is tough, you're also not going to have a lot of sympathy for that because it's like, oh no, you have these 3 young players who are really good, one of whom is already a Hart winner. However will you manage to survive? Like, again, that's the hardest part of building a team, is getting the pieces to build the rest of it around. Mm-hmm. The central impact key players. If what happens is Trevor Zegras becomes that and we have to pay him a lot of money because he's really fucking good, I don't see how you get to be mad. You don't get to be mad. It's so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
You don't get to be mad.
You know, it's one thing
you have to get over.
You know, it's one thing that's forgotten in all this too is that potentially in 2 years, you could be looking at this as the Ducks being competitive, and you're a competitive team, and your superstar only makes $5.75 million, which gives you the flexibility to do other things with your roster and make other moves. We're not thinking about that now because the Ducks are awful right now, and they're not close to being a competitive team, but who's to say that's not the case in 2 years from now, or in the final year of that $5.75 million extension that he's on, that, maybe they sign him to a long-term extension. At that point, he's locked in for $10 million, $11 million beyond that, but he's still only making $5.75 for that last year. If the Ducks are competitive at that point, if Leo Carlsson is up and he is what we think he is, and McTavish takes steps forward, and Drysdale's there, and Mintyukov and Zellweger and Pastuov and all these guys are there, and the Ducks are competing and making a push in the playoffs, you're going to be pretty darn happy that Trevor Zegras is making $5.75 million at that point and not $8 million. Yeah, the next year you're going to have to pay him more, but you've got some flexibility there. We always talk about it. You got to try and win when your stars are on their ELCs or whatever, or when they're making less money, because that's the kind of the main early window for you to win before you've got to pay them what they're worth. That's when you want to win. We've talked about it endlessly with a bunch of different teams. You've given yourself an extra 3 years at not having to pay this guy at a premium level to be able to do that. So it does we're not going to talk about it now, and a lot of people aren't going to talk about it now because it's hard to project this team being good in that period of time. We don't know if they're going to. We don't know if that's going to have any bearing on it. But it does give you some flexibility that if in the best case, like we said, he becomes a $10, $11 million player, and the Ducks are competitive in that final year or the final 2 years of that contract, you've got a little bit more flexibility to make a push with him making less money there.
I mean, here, let's paint a picture here, Edward. Let's jump forward in the calendar to the end of June 2024. And Trevor Zegras has cracked 80 points. Troy Terry has put up 35 goals. John Gibson only has 2 years left on his deal now. He showed behind a solid Greg Cronin scheme that he's still capable of being an effective goaltender. Lucas Dostal played 25 games looking like he can be a legitimate starter in the future. And we have just learned that not only do the Ducks have like the 7th or 8th pick in the draft, but Leo Carlsson, Adam Fantilli, and Connor Bedard are the Calder finalists. To your point, now I've got ELC Carlson for 2 more years and sub $6 million Zegras for 2 more years. Mm-hmm. You can make noise with that.
Yep. I mean, likely sub $3 million Jamie Drysdale for the next couple of years too. So.
Yeah, there is a situation where next June we are in a position similar to where Buffalo was this year, where you're like, there's a lot of promise there. They probably can't make it to a Stanley Cup final. It's still going to be a hard road. They've got some questions that they need to answer. But boy, are things looking really good for that team. Mm-hmm. That's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah, you can go out
rocks.
You can go out and address a bigger need in free agency with a little bit more flexibility. You can give a guy, a little bit more for 1 or 2 years. You've got $11.5 million off.
Yeah. The payroll with Rico gone, with Silverberg gone. You can trade Vetrano. You can trade McGinn. You can trade strong. There are then become all of these ways to continue to create cap space to now maximize on this window that you have suddenly found yourself in.
Yep.
It just feels needlessly nitpicky, I think, is ultimately what we're saying.
I mean, we say this with everything.
And I don't find it enjoyable.
It's the off season. You got too much time to pick things apart, find something wrong. It wasn't what you were hoping, what you expected, or what the majority of people wanted. because it doesn't fit whether it's the status quo of what other players, similar players have signed. It's a little bit out there. It didn't follow the nice, quick, friendly, clean cut process that you wanted to. That you can go in and destroy it and pick it apart. Was everything good about this extension? No, it wasn't perfect. No extension is perfect, but it was so drawn out, and there was enough that came out that just created a little sense of unease. That unless he signed an 8x8 or a 7 by whatever, there was always going to be something wrong with it. That's just the way it felt at that point. The moment a 3-year bridge deal came out, it sat too long on people hearing bridge that they were like, oh my God, he's going to leave. He's going to go to New York. He's going to become a Ranger. He's going to become a Sabre or whatever. He's going to go home and play in his home state, and that's going to be the case, and that's why he's signing a bridge deal. It can't be anything else other than he doesn't want to play here, and that's the narrative that took course and ran with. And, then it comes out, okay, well, Pat Verbeek is valuing around $4 million and the player is valuing around $7 million. Well, no, this guy, look at all the comparables. Look at, Pedersen when he signed his bridge deal. And look at Hughes and look at Caulfield. Like, this guy should be making $8 million now. And you just found ways. There's too much time to sit back and look at this data, statistics and whatever and say, oh, well, we're going to nitpick the hell out of this, and we're going to tear it apart. It's all going to be negative. I didn't see much positive regarding this extension because, one, it was drawn out. Two, it wasn't the same as what we've seen a lot of younger players get at this point. And three, the eventual outcome was, other than Point and Pedersen recently, not what you expect from signing a young superstar. And it just had all the makings and the workings of people just to easily pick it apart and find everything they could possibly find wrong with the way that this was conducted.
100%. I mean, it's exactly that. It's people were happy that it got done, but nobody really seemed, even after the fact, they were like, oh, I don't know about this. Like, we got it done, which is great, but like, oh, I have a lot of issues or concerns. And it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how much value there really is in just being so deeply cynical about the way things happen that, again, I don't know what else to say, man. I'm sorry, but like, I fucking called this shit 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what it is. And I said a couple of months ago from the Forever Mighty account, once it became clear that it was going to be a bridge deal, which was about a month ago apparently, because that's when it started leaking out that they settled on 3 years and things like that. Anybody who tells you they know what Trevor Zegras is lying. They don't know, because there's still so much variance in what he can be, what he can become, and what the value of that player is. The idea that they should just throw 8 years at him, and let's be honest, it would have been about $9 million, 9.5, if they really wanted to get it done for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a given he's a $9 million player in 3 years.
Nope.
It's not a given. And if he is, and you have to pay him more than $9 million, you won. And so I just, this like every microtransaction has to be a win finance bro mentality that has just seeped into the way that we talk about sports and roster construction. And part of it is analytics, and part of it is just people being stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It's just taken a lot of the joy and the logic out of this. Like, it just, you bend yourself over backwards trying to prove, not how, I don't want to say like prove how smart you are, but just like prove how clever you are, right? With, I can do this and then and like, look, man, I'm just as guilty of this in some ways as other people. I love a mock trade. I fucking love them. They're so funny to me. They're so fun. I love looking at ways to be like, ooh, we could bring this guy, like all that stuff. These little puzzles. I love that shit. But this like incessant belief that the team has to win every single transaction decisively, Do you want to know who thought like that? Bob Murray. At the end of his tenure, Elliot Friedman said multiple times over multiple seasons, guys don't like dealing with Bob Murray because he has to win every trade.
Yep.
That's how you fucking end up there, where you can't make interesting moves or you refuse to make interesting moves is because you have to prove you're better at this than everybody else. Sometimes it's okay for a trade to just be a good trade. It doesn't have to be a fucking masterclass in business negotiation tactics.
You know,
It's not Inside Man.
What came up recently in a different sport that reminds me of that is a comic came out about the GM for the Toronto Raptors, Masai Ujiri. Somebody described him as a fantasy sports GM who sends you 5 trades a day, and then before you have a chance to accept, cancels all those trades to send you 5 more trades the next day because he's got to win and overthinks it and sits there and thinks about, okay, no, I don't like this offer. I've had too much time to think about it. I'm going to take all these away and I'm going to send you more the next day because he has to win. Overthink it, overanalyze it. You got to win, and that's not the way to go about it.
Look, man, when it works, right?
Yeah.
You get the Kawhi Leonard trade, but boy, what did that cost you?
And when it doesn't, you miss out on Damian Lillard because you didn't want to give up OG Anunoby.
Man, how have we not even talked about that?
Yeah.
Bro, that whole story and fucking the other Cronin being like, I refuse to do anything nice for Miami on spec just to spite Dame is hilarious. The NBA is so messy. It's so funny.
I love it.
The drama it's the best.
Great. But I mean, that was it. That's all the big news I had. I mean, the game's over. The Ducks lost 4-1 to the LA Kings.
Damn straight, baby.
Yep.
Tank is on.
Mm-hmm. Tank is on.
Come on, Macklin.
The goal was Brett Leeson from Radko Gudas and Zach Kassian, if that tells you how the Ducks offense was tonight. Again, majority of the starters aren't in, or at least for the forward group, aren't in the roster. A lot of the exciting stuff, and from what I read, the Mintikov and Zellweger and those guys played pretty good tonight. Leo Carlson apparently scored a pretty slick shootout goal, which is nice to see, and they do that consolation shootout even in the loss now, where they just give you.
I gotta be honest with you. Of all the times of where a stupid, pointless shootout works, preseason is exactly it.
Yeah,
I think they should go 5 guys deep.
Yeah, why not?
I think it is the perfect way to cap it off. I would honestly almost be willing to say, cut the periods to 15 minutes or 18 minutes.
Yeah. And
then do a 5-player shootout and call it a day. Because one, I don't think the preseason names need to be full. I don't think they need to be full games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's enough to be gained. And two, preseason's the perfect opportunity to be like, look at all this cool shit these guys can do. That's super fun.
Yeah.
Not in the middle of fucking February when some idiot team is like, if we lose this shootout, we're out of the playoffs forever.
Yeah. Just love it.
That shit sucks. In the preseason, absolutely.
Yeah, guys will try shit too, and you got a bunch of random guys in there who normally don't play. And
let them take their fucking helmets off. Let them fucking go. I'm sorry. Let them take their buckets off. Let them get the lettuce out there. What the fuck I'm talking about now?
Watching too much shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, that was it. That was it.
Biggest fucking sea in the world.
That was it that I had. I think we covered pretty much all of it. I mean, we have our season preview coming up that we're going to do a full deep dive once we know the rosters, who's going to be up, who's not. Take a look on what we think the lines are going to be, how we think the Ducks are going to do this year, what we think of Greg Cronin and what he's going to do and what he's going to bring to the team, and just kind of dive into a lot deeper than we did today with a lot more detail and look at some of the projections, I guess, for the division and the NHL as a whole and where we think the Ducks stand among other teams. So that will come closer to opening night for the Ducks, I would imagine, because the opening night for the regular season is on the 10th, and the Ducks don't play until the 14th. So that does give us a little bit of extra time that we don't have to pump it out. Ideally, we get it out before the 10th. But we do have until the 14th. So expect it sometime within the next, I guess for me, it'd be the next 10 days now before the Ducks begin their season. and we'll get that show out there and give you guys a full breakdown of what we expect for this year, because it should be interesting, man. Should be an interesting one.
Should be a fun year. It should be a much more fun year than last year was.
We said that last year. And it was not.
No,
a lot
but
more
like
fun year.
this year should be better.
Yeah.
Last year was a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about this year, and even if things aren't going well in Anaheim, there's a lot of reasons to watch the Gulls this year. A lot of excitement there with the young players that are coming up. So there will be exciting hockey to watch somewhere that has implications for the Ducks, whether that's in Anaheim or San Diego. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch regardless. A lot of storylines to cover. The return, hopefully long-term, of Jamie Drysdale after not playing last year. Another year of Trevor Zegras, of Troy Terry, Mason McTavish, their development, and then obviously the kids. Dostal, Zellweger, Minchikov, Pastuov, those guys, and see how they can do. So fun times on the horizon, and we're going to be more active, obviously, than we have been over the last month here. A lot going on, a lot of downtime in the summer, but as the season picks up here, we'll kick things off with our season preview, and then we'll be back pretty regularly, hopefully, to break down a lot of what's happening in the season.
And Eddie, if you will indulge me one moment.
Yeah.
Anaheim Calling, for those of you who know what it is back. I'm very excited to be a part of this. Anaheim Calling is where I first got the opportunity to write a little bit. It's where I met a bunch of people. It's where I met all the guys from Crash the Pond, CJ and Jake and Felix and all those guys. And, CJ gave me an opportunity a few years ago to write about the Ducks and have some fun, and that was at Anaheim Calling. And there's a lot of people who have been able to get a start. Jen Neal was a editor for Anaheim Calling, went on to write for Puck Daddy. Now I think works for E-Games. Like I think she's like a brand manager or something like that, but for like esports. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Esports teams and stuff like that. But more than anything, it's going to be part of what is the For Hockey Fans website network that was started by Steph Driver and Taylor Baird and John Bott. And if you know any of those names, then you're a very smart person. And if not, they were three people who were involved with SB Nation, the NHL vertical. Steph built and ran it. Steph did a wonderful job of bringing a bunch of really talented people to SB Nation NHL and getting them to pump out wonderful stuff. A lot of people went on to have really interesting careers and things like that in NHL media and NHL front offices, all different things like that. And then sometimes people like me get to sneak in. But they have built a new network that they're calling For Hockey Fans and for sports, for Fans Sports Network, starting with For Hockey Fans. And it's a bunch of people who used to write for SB Nation. A lot of the same sites are same names. There are some new sites for old teams and stuff like that, obviously. But we're going to be trying to do a lot of fun stuff over there. If you like the Ducks, we're going to be trying very hard to get Anaheim Calling back up to what it's been in the past. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to help be a part of that. We've got some stuff up already, looking at a big picture look at the Ducks. Kind of, it originally started as like a yearly physical type bit and kind of whatever. I talked about the New Jersey patches and how embarrassing it is that it looks like a 3-year-old put a bunch of patches on a jersey and just said, yeah, this works, it's fine. We've got an Atlantic Division preview up. That's a lot of fun. We're going to be getting up more stuff. Eddy is going to be helping us out. He's going to be doing some prospect stuff for us, and hopefully I'll make him write some other stuff. But again, I'm really excited about the season ahead. It should be an interesting time for the Ducks, and hopefully it'll be a really good and fun time over at Anaheim Calling, and we really would love to have you guys. We're on Twitter. We're on Blue Sky. Me and Eddy are on Twitter and Blue Sky. Forever Mighty, at least, is on Blue Sky. So, again, like we always say, anywhere you can find us, hit us up. Talk to us on YouTube under the videos. Talk to us on Blue Sky. Talk to us on Twitter. Let us know what you think. We always love to hear from you guys and know what we can do to make the show better and more enjoyable and more fun for you guys. And I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm really excited about the year ahead at Anaheim Calling and what we're hopefully going to be able to get done. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be great. You guys gotta check it out. I know from what I've heard and from what I've seen, and just knowing Steven, the amount of work that's gone behind it has been exceptional. So it's gonna be great. I've read the few articles that have been up there, and like Steven mentioned, I've got a few prospect things that are gonna be coming out throughout the year. Which is honestly, when I did write it for the Hockey Writer and a few other places, that was what I had the most fun doing, was checking up with the prospects. So it's going to be a lot of different things coming out, a lot of great teams behind the team content at For Hockey Fans. So whether you're a Ducks fan or if you're listening and you're a fan of other teams, it's going to be a great place to check out content for your favorite team. So make sure to check it out. As we said, we're going to be here as often as we can to break down stuff on the audio side for the Ducks. So make sure to tune in to us. And lastly, again, to bring it up, the Ducks season preview will be coming in the next week and a bit here. So make sure to tune in to our social media for when we're going to release that. And to listen on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your show. And appreciate you guys coming back. Appreciate you guys sticking around. And we will see you soon before opening night. Take care, guys.
Bye, y'all.